I spent 70 years chasing peace in all the wrong places. Now at 82, I finally found it. These words from Eleanor, a retired teacher, stopped me in my tracks. Her calm certainty made me wonder if we've misunderstood the journey to inner peace entirely. Today, I'm sharing wisdom from 12 individuals over 70 who discovered inner peace because of their age. Their stories reveal surprising patterns that younger generations rarely recognize, including one counterintuitive approach to handling regret that transformed Eleanor's final chapter. These elders have uncovered time-tested truths about fulfillment that most of us only glimpse when looking backward. It's a strange contradiction. We fear aging deeply, yet research consistently shows that our later years often bring the most profound peace. Why do we dread the very stage of life that could free us from decades of restlessness? Think about the common fears that shadow thoughts of aging. When I asked people under 60 what worried them most about growing older, their responses clustered around interconnected anxieties: declining health that limits independence, shifting roles that trigger feelings of irrelevance, and narrowing social circles that lead to isolation. These concerns reflect real changes we face as we age. Our bodies transform, our social positions evolve, and our communities sometimes contract. Yet paradoxically, happiness research reveals what scientists call the U-curve of happiness. Contentment bottoms out during those hectic middle-age years of career building and family responsibilities, then rises steadily after 70. This pattern appears across diverse cultures and economic conditions, suggesting something fundamental about human experience that contradicts our deepest fears about aging. Frank, a 78-year-old former executive who had spent decades climbing corporate ladders while raising 3 children, laughed heartily when I mentioned this research. Having finally settled into retirement after a health scare in his 60s, his perspective had transformed. "I spent decades terrified of getting old," he told me. "I exercised obsessively, tried every supplement, even considered cosmetic surgery, all because I thought aging meant the end of everything good. Now I wish I could tell my younger self to relax. I'm happier now than I was at 45. This sentiment echoed through nearly all 12 interviews. Margaret, 74, described her 60s as a time of panic about the future, yet found her 70s brought an unexpected sense of freedom. "I stopped fighting against time," she explained, "and started working with it instead." Why does our culture paint such a bleak picture of aging when increased happiness is so common? Media, marketing, and everyday language frame aging as something to combat rather than embrace. We celebrate those who don't look their age, rather than those who embody the wisdom their years have earned. These narratives create unnecessary fear, keeping us resistant to transitions that might actually liberate us. The peace many find after 70 often emerges from the very limitations we fear. Arthur, 84, compared his experience to a river narrowing. "As the banks draw closer, the water flows more deeply and powerfully. My world got smaller, but somehow richer." Joyce, 76, shared how health challenges shifted her expectations. "When I stopped measuring my days by productivity, I discovered hours filled with small pleasures I'd been too busy to notice. The wisdom of accepting mortality plays a crucial role too." "There's nothing like mortality to focus the mind," said Robert, 81. "I don't waste time on petty conflicts or impressing others anymore. What a relief." Henry, 87, captured this wisdom perfectly. "Young people think freedom means having unlimited options. I've learned that real freedom comes from choosing what matters within your limits. That's when the noise stops, and you can finally hear yourself." This acceptance doesn't happen automatically. It requires intentional practice. Most interviewees acknowledged they had to unlearn habits of striving deeply ingrained through decades of living in a youth-oriented culture. They questioned assumptions about what makes a good life and released identities built around achievement. What makes this shift possible? How does the nature of peace itself change as we age? That's what we'll explore next. The peace we seek at 25 looks different from the peace we find at 75. This might seem obvious, yet we rarely consider how the experience of inner tranquility transforms as we age. Most discussions about finding peace treat it as a universal, unchanging state, as if the serenity sought by a young parent is identical to that discovered by someone in their 8th decade. My conversations with elders revealed something more nuanced. They described a quality of peace that differs fundamentally from what they experienced in earlier life stages. In my 40s, peace meant finding moments of quiet between commitments, explained Ruth, 76. It was like catching my breath before the next sprint. Now, peace isn't something I find in moments between activities. It's the foundation underneath everything. This distinction emerged consistently across interviews. Younger and middle-aged adults often described peace as temporary relief from pressure, a vacation from normal life. The elders spoke of a more integrated experience, a baseline state rather than an occasional reprieve. This connects to what I call the urgency paradox. Despite having fewer years ahead, many elders report feeling less rushed, more present, and remarkably, less concerned about time passing, the opposite of what one might expect. Dr. Bernard, 83, a retired psychologist, explained, "When you're younger, your sense of time stretches infinitely forward. This creates constant pressure to use it productively. When you recognize time is limited, you focus less on accumulating experiences and more on appreciating what's in front of you." We see this shift in how priorities naturally change when future planning becomes less central. At 40 or 50, peace often gets postponed, something to achieve after completing education, raising children, or reaching career milestones. After 70, this future orientation diminishes. Helen, 77, explained, "I spent decades thinking peace would come when I finally accomplished enough. Now I understand peace isn't waiting on the other side of achievement. It's available whenever I stop thinking I need to become something more than I am." This represents a profound shift, from peace as a reward for future accomplishments to peace as an experience available in the present moment. William, 84, described how this manifests in daily life. "Last week during a thunderstorm, I sat on my porch instead of rushing inside. I watched raindrops form rivers on my driveway, felt the cool mist on my face, and listened to thunder roll across the valley. 40 years ago, I would have hurried inside, annoyed at getting wet. Now these moments feel sacred." Our relationship with time itself fundamentally changes after 70. Many interviewees describe time simultaneously speeding up, years passing quickly, while individual moments expanded. This paradoxical experience creates new opportunities for peace by altering how they engage with daily life. Neuroscience offers explanations for this shift. The brain's perception of time changes with age. Novel experiences are processed differently, causing memorable events to seem to last longer. With fewer novel experiences in later life, time can seem to accelerate. Yet this same phenomenon allows for deeper appreciation of familiar pleasures. Several meditation practitioners noted how these practices aligned with their changing experience of time. "Meditation always felt forced when I was younger," said Margaret. "Now it matches how I naturally experience the world." This points to why inner peace after 70 differs from earlier life stages. It's grounded in presence rather than future planning, and in being rather than becoming. Younger adults often experience peace as temporary escape from striving. Elders described it as acceptance of what is. This shift in perspective requires physical changes too, starting with your immediate environment. The spaces we inhabit can either support or undermine this emerging capacity for presence. Have you ever considered that your living environment might be silently undermining your search for peace? The physical spaces we inhabit don't just reflect our inner state, they actively shape it. This connection becomes especially important after 70, when most people spend significantly more time at home. "I lived in the same house for 43 years before I realized it was working against me," said Martha, 76. She described how her home had transformed from a haven into a source of stress. Every room was filled with memories, but also with obstacles. Furniture that was hard to navigate around, poor lighting that strained my eyes, and decades of accumulated possessions demanding attention. This experience resonates with many older adults. Nearly all 12 elders interviewed described how their unchanged homes had become misaligned with their current needs and peace pursuits. What worked perfectly at 50 creates unnecessary friction at 75. Mobility shifts, sensory changes, and different daily rhythms all influence how we interact with our surroundings. Steps become challenging. Adequate lighting becomes essential. Furniture arrangements that served entertaining large groups feel overwhelming during quieter days. Many found success by designating specific peace zones, sanctuaries where everything supports tranquility. Joseph, 79, transformed an unused dining nook into a morning meditation corner. I positioned my chair to face the garden, added a small table for tea, and removed everything that didn't contribute to calm. Now I start each day with 30 minutes there. It's become the foundation of my peace practice. Elaine, 84, converted her cluttered guest room with overflowing storage bins and rarely used furniture into what she calls her sanctuary space. I kept one comfortable chair, a good reading lamp, my favorite books, and a small table. The walls are now a soft blue, and I have plants and a bird feeder just outside the window. The simplicity itself is calming. These transformations weren't expensive renovations, but thoughtful realignments. The key was identifying peace-supporting activities and creating environments specifically designed for those moments. Environmental psychology research confirms these intuitive changes. Studies show that incorporating natural elements indoors significantly reduces stress hormones and improves mood in older adults. Plants, natural light, nature views, and natural materials like wood contribute to lower blood pressure and anxiety levels. Clara, 77, arranged her reading chair near a window overlooking her garden. I can't garden like I used to, but watching the birds and seasonal changes brings me tremendous peace. William set up an indoor herb garden, providing both visual pleasure and sensory engagement through touch and smell. Perhaps the most significant environmental shift involved finding balance between meaningful possessions and overwhelming accumulation. I used to think more things meant more comfort, explained Thomas, 82. Now I understand that fewer, more meaningful things create more space for peace. He systematically evaluated his possessions, keeping only those with genuine meaning or regular utility. Eleanor, 78, shared her approach. I asked myself, does it truly hold significance for me now? Does it support my daily life? Does seeing or using it bring me joy or peace? If the answer was no to all three, I let it go. The most effective changes were personalized, creating dedicated peace zones, incorporating stress-reducing natural elements, and prioritizing meaningful possessions over accumulation. These changes required no moving or major renovations, just intentional attention to how space affects mind and spirit. While these physical changes create the foundation, many elders found their deepest peace through spiritual practices that transformed their relationship with time itself. What happens when we stop fighting time and start seeing it as sacred? Like a flower slowly opening its petals at dusk rather than dawn, can we discover new beauty in life's later chapters? This question became central to many of the conversations I had with elders about inner peace. My spirituality in my 30s was all questions and seeking, observed Ruth, 82, who spent decades exploring different meditation traditions and religious philosophies. Now it's more about recognizing what I've found. This pattern appeared repeatedly. Spirituality after 70 often takes on a different quality. While younger spiritual seekers frequently describe themselves as searching, older practitioners more commonly speak of deepening into what they already know. This shift doesn't happen for everyone, but when it does, it profoundly transforms the experience of aging. Many interviewees described how their spiritual lives expanded naturally as they grew older, becoming more integrated into daily routines rather than existing as separate practices. The awareness of mortality plays a significant role in this evolution. As Martin 77 explained, "Facing that my time is limited hasn't made me more afraid. It's made everything more precious." This echoed across spiritual traditions represented in the interviews. Whether through formal religious practice or personal spiritual frameworks, acknowledging finite time opened new dimensions of meaning. For some, this manifested as a spiritual awakening after decades of more practical focus. Catherine, 75, had devoted most of her adult life to career and family with little time for spiritual pursuits. At 72, after recovering from a serious illness, she began a meditation practice that transformed her outlook. "I realized I'd spent my life looking forward or backward, rarely present. Learning to be fully in each moment brought peace I never imagined possible." Others experienced deeper engagement with long-held beliefs. James, 84, had been a practicing Catholic his entire life, but described how his faith evolved. "In my younger years, religion was more about obligations and rules. Now it's about presence and gratitude. I experience God differently, less as a distant authority and more as an ever-present companion." Different spiritual traditions offer various perspectives on aging as a sacred time. In many Eastern traditions, later life is viewed as a natural period for spiritual deepening. Hindu traditions describe the final stage of life as one devoted to spiritual matters after fulfilling worldly duties. Buddhist teachings emphasize how impermanence becomes a lived reality in later years, opening doors to greater freedom. Even those without formal religious affiliations found spiritual dimensions through practices connecting them to something larger. Research shows meditation and mindfulness help many older adults develop new responses to stress. As one meditation practitioner noted, "When I was in the ER, I stayed with my breath instead of panicking." Gratitude practices proved particularly powerful alongside meditation. Studies indicate a significant inverse relationship between gratitude and loneliness. Several interviewees maintained gratitude journals, writing down 3 things they appreciated each day, which reduced feelings of isolation and increased their sense of connection. Spirituality provided frameworks for understanding life's final chapters, offering language and context for experiences like physical decline and loss. Daniel, 80, who practices Judaism, explained, "Our traditions honor life transitions. I view aging as a sacred time with its own purpose and wisdom." This reframing transformed his relationship with the aging process from resistance to acceptance. These spiritual dimensions emerge through practices that connect us to something larger than ourselves, whether through formal traditions, nature, creative expression, or simple awareness of the present moment. Practical wisdom that can transform how we experience every stage of life. Looking back at the conversations with these 12 remarkable individuals, I noticed something unexpected. The most surprising pattern was how they found peace by releasing expectations, comparisons, and the exhausting pursuit of more. Their collective wisdom reveals that our peace has been waiting for us all along, hidden beneath layers of striving we mistake for living. Neuroscientist Glenn Fox explains, "The more we practice gratitude, the more we become connected to its transformative benefits." What if the greatest gift of aging is what we finally have the courage to let go? Share your thoughts. What would you release to find greater peace today?